$3,000. That is what the dealership quoted my neighbor to replace his clutch on a 2019 truck with 62,000 miles. 62,000 miles. His father drove a 1987 pickup for 240,000 miles on the original clutch. Same family, same driving habits, different engineering. This is not bad luck. This is a design choice. Today, I am going to show you exactly how and why they did it. I'm Johnny, and welcome to the factory floor. If you are tired of getting ripped off by manufacturers who think you are too dumb to notice, hit that subscribe button. Let us get into it. To understand the scam, you have to understand what they took away from you. Your grandfather's truck had a single mass flywheel, one solid chunk of metal bolted to the crankshaft. When the engine runs, that flywheel stores rotational energy. Simple, durable, elegant. And here is the key. When the clutch wore out, you pulled the transmission, replaced the clutch disc for about $150, resurfaced the flywheel for another $50, and you were back on the road for under $500 total. A decent shade tree mechanic could do it in a weekend with hand tools. That flywheel could be resurfaced 3 or 4 times over the life of the truck. I talked to a guy on an Isuzu forum who still has his 1985 Trooper with close to 300,000 miles on it and never replaced the clutch, not once. Good driving habits go a long way, but so does simple engineering that is designed to last. Semi-truck clutches can go over 1 million miles with proper care. 1 million. Those big rigs still use heavy-duty single-mass systems that can be rebuilt and serviced. A 1967 Ford pickup could survive 275,000 miles on basic maintenance because the hardware was so robust, it rarely needed more than fluid changes and wear items. Those trucks were built in an era where simplicity meant longevity. So, what changed? 2 things. The engines got worse, and the accountants got smarter. In the mid-1980s, automakers started pushing smaller displacement engines harder to meet fuel economy standards. 4-cylinder engines began making horsepower numbers that used to require 6 cylinders. The problem is these downsized, high-output engines are not refined. They vibrate, they pulse, and they send torsional spikes through the drivetrain that the old, simple clutch systems could not completely smooth out. So the engineers had a choice. They could have redesigned engine mounts. They could have added balancer shafts. They could have accepted a little more noise in exchange for durability. Instead, they invented the dual mass flywheel. And here is where it gets interesting. The official story is that dual mass flywheels were necessary to handle modern engine vibrations. But the real story is that someone in a boardroom realized you could replace a $50 maintenance item with an $800 disposable part. And you could make it so complex that the customer had no choice but to come back to the dealer. This is planned obsolescence, not as a theory, as a documented business strategy. General Motors pioneered this concept back in 1924, when executive Alfred Sloan suggested annual model year design changes to convince car owners to buy new replacements each year. The playbook has not changed, just the tactics. A former General Motors engineer recently explained that emissions regulations became a convenient excuse for automakers as they gradually realized there was money to be made in less reliable vehicles. And here is the kicker. 2 companies control the global clutch market. Schaeffler, which owns Look, holds about 13%. ZF, which owns Sachs, controls around 12%. These companies hold patents on dual mass flywheel technology. They supply the original equipment to General Motors, Toyota, Ford, and Chrysler. They do not compete on durability. They compete on who gets to sell you the same part twice. Now let me show you exactly how they engineered failure into your drivetrain. A dual mass flywheel splits that single solid chunk of metal into 2 separate masses, connected by a series of internal springs and dampers. The primary mass bolts to the crankshaft. The secondary mass connects to the clutch. Between them are arc springs, straight springs, and friction washers, all working together to absorb vibration. Sounds sophisticated. It is. And that is the problem. Every one of those springs is a failure. every damper wears out, every friction surface degrades. Scientific research published in engineering journals confirms that lightweight materials commonly used in flywheel hubs compromise mechanical strength and durability, leading to premature failure. The springs inside a dual-mass flywheel fatigue over time. Period. This is not a defect. This is physics. Metal flexing repeatedly will eventually crack. The internal grease breaks down. The friction surfaces wear. And unlike a single-mass flywheel, you cannot see any of this happening until it is too late. Forum posts from BMW owners describe what they call the death rattle. It is a clunking noise at idle that disappears when you push the clutch in. By the time you hear that noise, you are looking at a full replacement. Some dual-mass flywheels fail as early as 20,000 miles. The average lifespan is 70 to 100,000 miles. Compare that to single-mass systems, which can last 300,000 miles or more. Here is the real crime. Unlike simpler designs, you cannot resurface a dual-mass flywheel. You cannot rebuild it. You cannot repair it. When it fails, and it will fail, you throw the whole thing in the garbage and buy a new one. BMW added another layer to this scam with their self-adjusting clutch. One owner on an E46 forum put it perfectly. He said the self-adjusting clutch is just another one of BMW's solutions to a problem no one ever complained about. Every older BMW he owned had buttery smooth clutch engagement. Not anymore. Truckers report the same experience with self-adjusting systems in commercial vehicles. They say these clutches hardly ever last as long as manually adjusted versions. More complexity, more failure points, more money out of your pocket. But it gets worse. The manufacturers know these parts fail, so they build in what I call the cascade effect. A worn dual-mass flywheel does not just rattle. It sends vibrations through the entire drivetrain. Continue driving with a degraded flywheel, and you can cause catastrophic clutch or transmission failure. A repair that started at $800 can suddenly cost $3,000. Most manufacturers now recommend replacing the dual-mass flywheel every time you replace the clutch. Not because the flywheel is necessarily bad, but because attempting to reuse a worn flywheel usually results in premature failure of not only the flywheel, but the clutch as well. They engineered a system where you have to replace 2 expensive parts instead of 1, every single time. And here is what all that engineering really costs you. The old way. Resurfacing a single-mass flywheel costs $50 to $100. Clutch disc replacement costs $150 to $300. Labor for a competent independent mechanic might be about 4 hours. Total job $400 to $600. You could do it yourself if you had a lift and a free Saturday. The new way. Clutch replacement on a modern vehicle runs from $1,200 to $2,500. Most drivers pay around $1,800 for parts and labor, but that does not include the flywheel. Add the mandatory dual-mass flywheel replacement. That is another $200 to $800 for the part alone. You cannot resurface it. You are buying new every time. Vehicles with dual clutch transmissions cost 2 to 3 times more than a standard manual clutch replacement. Labor makes up 50 to 70% of the total repair cost, because the transmission has to come out to access the clutch system. Most shops charge 4 to 8 hours at $100 to $150 per hour. That is $400 to $1,200 just to touch the parts. The old clutch system might last the life of the vehicle with proper care. The new system is rated for 60,000 to 100,000 miles. For most drivers, that means replacing a $2,000 assembly every 5 years. They turned a lifetime part into a recurring expense, a subscription fee for the privilege of shifting your own gears. But there is a way out, and they really do not want you to know about it. Option 1 is the single-mass flywheel conversion. Companies like Exedy make kits that replace your dual-mass flywheel with a solid single-mass unit. The main advantage is price. Single-mass kits are cheaper to buy, and because they have no internal moving parts, they can be machined and reinstalled when you fit a new clutch. Future maintenance costs drop dramatically. The trade-off is real. Drivers notice more throttle input required, and a different feel in gear shifts. Increased noise and vibration at idle. Some people hate it. One driver on a forum said his car went from silky smooth to feeling like a Mack truck after converting. But others accept the trade-off because they understand what they are getting. A clutch system that can be maintained and repaired instead of thrown away. Option 2 is knowing the warning signs before catastrophic failure. Listen for irregular clunking noises while your vehicle is in neutral. That death rattle at startup means the flywheel needs attention now, not next month. Increasing vibrations through the clutch pedal are another warning. A bad flywheel can make your engine appear to misfire with a rough idle. Any rattle that disappears when you push the clutch pedal is a red flag. Catch it early and you replace the flywheel. Miss it and you replace the flywheel, the clutch, and possibly the transmission. Option 3 is buying quality replacement parts if you must stay with dual mass. Luke holds patents on this technology for a reason. They supply original equipment to major manufacturers. If you have to replace a dual mass flywheel, at least buy from a company that engineered the system in the first place. Exidy also makes dual mass replacement kits that include the cover disc and release bearing as a complete assembly. Quality matters. Option 4 is buying older. Trucks from the analog era used heavy-duty frames, simple electronics, and easy-to-service components. A 1994 F-150 could run strong past 216,000 miles with nothing more than basic maintenance. Find a clean example from before the dual mass era, and you opt out of the scam entirely. Trucks like that were built to be serviced. This is not about clutches. This is about an industry that decided maintenance should be their revenue stream instead of your right. There is an information asymmetry between the producer, who knows exactly how long the product was designed to last, and the customer, who does not. They are counting on you not knowing. Now you know. Every time you convert to single mass, every time you buy a pre-dual mass truck, every time you share this information with someone about to get fleeced at the dealership, you are voting with your wrench against a system designed to... If you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button. Then watch the next video that appears on the screen.